In terms of total GDP, PPP International Dollar, Egypt wins out as the richest country in Africa for 2021. With 104 million people, Egypt is Africa's third most populous country. Egypt is also a mixed economy strong in tourism, agriculture, and fossil fuels. Nigeria is the most populous country in Africa, with 211 million residents, nearly twice the population of Egypt, contributing to its GDP. Nigeria is a lower middle income. Although GDP is an extremely valuable metric, it is also quite broad. For example, it disregards the number of citizens contributing to a country's GDP, which means a country with a vast but less effective workforce can post a higher GDP than a country with a smaller but efficient workforce. So in this video, we are going to discuss 10 richest countries in Africa per GDP. So the video is going to be amazing, so make sure to stick till the end. Before starting the video, be sure to smash the like button and subscribe to never miss out on any of our videos. Number 10. Angola, $66.49 billion. The country of Angola has one of the biggest reserves of raw materials in Africa. Essentially, it could be higher up on this list of Africa's richest nations. However, due to resource mismanagement and internal corruption, the economy of the country has been negatively affected. With a GDP of over $124 billion, it comes in at number 6 on this list. Angola's economy is built on oil, with large reserves of natural gas and oil, making up over 1/3 of its GDP. The production and export of crude oil contribute significantly to foreign exchange. In fact, 90% of the nation's revenue in the export sector comes from the sale of crude oil. Other noteworthy exports include diamonds and cargo ships. Agriculture is also expected to become an important sector for the economy going forward. Number 9. Ivory Coast, $70.99 billion. A former French colony that achieved independence in 1960, the Ivory Coast economy has expanded by an average of 8% each year since 2011, making it one of the fastest growing globally. Its economic capital, Abidjan, has an estimated 5.1 million inhabitants in its metropolitan area, the third largest French-speaking city in the world. However, political unrest and civil war in recent decades have troubled the country's economic activities, and equitable distribution of the benefits of its growth remains problematic. Close to 1 in 2 Ivorians lives in poverty. Number 8. Ghana, $74.26 billion. Rounding up this list of the top 10 richest African countries is Ghana, with a GDP just shy of $74 billion over the last year. Ghana, found in West Africa, has an economy that is both diverse and rich in resources. The country was the first in sub-Saharan Africa to break free from colonial rule, as well as the first to achieve the target of having extreme poverty. The nation has attracted foreign investment due to its overall positive business environment, experiencing economic growth of just over 6% in the last 2 years. Services contribute to around 50% of the Ghanaian GDP and employ almost 30% of the workforce. Industry is the next biggest contributor to GDP at just under 25%, followed by agriculture. Number 7. Ethiopia, $93.97 billion. Found in the Horn of Africa, the landlocked country of Ethiopia, split by the Great Rift Valley, is the 8th richest country in Africa. With archaeological finds dating back over 3 million years, this ancient land is famous for being the place where the coffee bean first originated. The nation is the highest coffee and honey producer in Africa, making up a large portion of the country's foreign exchange. Other exports include legumes, oily seeds, and cut flowers. The GDP of more than $100 billion comprises agriculture, construction, manufacturing, tourism, food processing, resources, and energy. Agriculture is the region's most promising resource, making up over 40% of the GDP, 60% of exports, and more than 80% of total employment. Number 6. Kenya, $106.04 billion. Kenya, a country in East Africa, well known for its vast landscapes and wildlife, is next on Africa's richest country list, having a GDP of over $100 billion. This nation, with its stable living conditions, an established coffee and tea sector, and rapidly growing agricultural sector, is the wealthiest in Southeast and Central Africa. Historically, Its coastline has been home to a number of strategic ports for Asian and Arabian traders for centuries, becoming a trade hub for the region. The Kenyan economy is not built around the oil sector, like so many other countries on this list, but still experiences diverse positive growth. Number 5. Morocco, $124.00 billion. With a GDP of over $130 billion, Morocco comes in at number 5 on this list of richest countries in Africa. The economy of this country in North Africa is versatile and stable, experiencing growth in a number of industries over the last decade. It is the second richest non-oil producing African country. The country's economy is driven by mining and manufacturing. 30% of Morocco's GDP comes from industry, 15% from agriculture, and 55% from services. This is supplemented by a growing tourism sector, with locals being welcoming of tourists and the government placing a strong emphasis on attracting visitors to the country that is well known for its attractions. Number 4. Algeria, $151.46 billion. The largest country on the continent found in the north, Algeria comes in at 4th place on this list of wealthiest countries in Africa. Boasting a significant economy and available infrastructure and a GDP of over $190 billion, the county achieved the notable achievement of reducing poverty by 20% within the last 20 years. Crude oil reserves are abundant in this developing Saharan country, and the economy is heavily reliant on it, so much so that hydrocarbons, oil, and natural gas make up almost 70% of the income of the country. Number 3. South Africa, $329.53 billion. This southernmost country in Africa is another significant player on the continent as the third richest African country. With a highly developed economy, advanced infrastructure, and a GDP of over $400 billion, the country is considered one of the fastest developing countries in the world. Often referred to as the Rainbow Nation, South Africa is one of the only countries on this list that is not reliant on a single source of revenue. Number 2. Egypt, $394.28 billion. This ancient land in northern Africa held the spot of the richest country in Africa for many years. However, the economy suffered severely and foreign exchange reserves tumbled following the 2011 revolution during the Arab uprising. With the most recent GDP of more than $400 billion, Egypt now holds the second spot on this rich Africa list. Economic activities have improved and stabilized over the last decade to experience positive economic growth. The government recently concluded an economic reform program alongside the IMF aimed at reforming and bolstering the economy. Number 1. Nigeria, $514.05 billion. This West African country, with a population of over 200 million citizens, makes up an essential part of the African economy. With a GDP just over $510 billion, Nigeria holds the position of the richest country in Africa. The country records around 1.6 million barrels of crude oil a day, according to OPEC, making it the largest exporter of crude oil in Africa. These petroleum exports make up 10% of the total GDP and over 80% of the export sector revenue. In addition to petroleum, Nigeria has an abundance of raw materials and natural resources, contributing to the region's wealth. Let us know your opinion in the comment section below. This was all for today. Hope you liked the video. Subscribe to our channel and stay tuned for more interesting videos. Stay safe, and we will be back soon with another video.